Hello everybody, it's me Jones RMJ here. Tysons is a Washington, D.C. suburb with an interesting history and major ambitions. Tysons is located right here, about halfway between Washington, D.C. and Washington Dulles International Airport. Back in the 1950s, Tysons was nothing but rural farmland, but everything changed in the 1960s with the construction of Tysons Corner Center, the largest mall in the D.C. area. This, combined with the suburbanization that had affected many cities around this time, and Tysons started to grow rapidly. Countless corporations and tech jobs have relocated to the area, with major corporations like Capital One and Hilton having headquarters here. And the growth that has come with this has changed the Tysons skyline into a more urban setting with a lot of skyscrapers under construction and planned. Despite growing up as primarily a suburban office park, there was a major urbanization plan to grow Tysons from a tiny census-designated place, only currently home to 20,000 people today, to a new city home to over 100,000 people and 200,000 jobs, all by 2050. This is by far one of the most ambitious urbanization goals in the country, but is this even possible? Let's take a look at the rise of Tysons. Before we begin, make sure you are subscribed with the notification bell on so you can stay up to date on the latest architectural projects and statistics. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, Tysons was nothing more than just a rural area with a lot of farmland. As recently as the 1950s, Tysons was just a quiet rural intersection flanked by a few small stores and a fruit stand operated by Mr. Tyson. Big changes came in the 1960s, when the Tysons area moved from a country of crossroads to a giant commercial urban area with the awarding of contracts at the interchange of Virginia Route 7 and Virginia Route 123. In addition, the Tysons Corner Center was constructed in 1968, and it was proclaimed as the largest enclosed mall in the world at the time. In recent years, the influx of technology companies into Northern Virginia has brought many new office buildings and hotels to the landscape. Within a few decades, Tysons transformed from rural farmland to a major edge city of Washington, D.C. In 2014, the Silver Line Metro was extended and included 4 stops in Tysons, which only continued to accelerate its growth. Today, Tysons is home to 2 massive shopping malls and many large corporations. Despite all this though, Tysons still has the feeling of a giant office park with a bunch of skyscrapers randomly plopped here and there rather than an actual city. When you look at a map of the area, this becomes especially clear when you see massive roads with multiple lanes and random curves rather than a traditional grid system that you see in most cities. In addition, Tysons still remains more of an office park where people just go to work and shop at the malls rather than live there. While it is a nice, clean, and safe area, if Tysons wants to transform into a true city, it's going to need to reorganize the streets into more of a grid system and receive a boatload of infill to make it more dense and urban. With all of this major growth in Tysons, the leaders of Fairfax County recognize the issues I've stated and have developed a plan to try and combat them. This plan calls for increasing the population of Tysons to 100,000, increasing the jobs to 200,000, and creating a street grid to accommodate the infill while urbanizing the area. Let's first take a look at how Tysons plans to form a street grid. As you can see from this map, this is what the road layout in Tysons is today, pretty typical to something you'd expect from a suburban area. Now here is a picture of the street grid that Tysons would like to form by 2050. As you can see, it definitely will be a major improvement, but it doesn't really highlight how it will modify the existing roads. I've been to Tysons multiple times, and most of the existing roads are multiple lanes wide with fast-moving traffic that definitely doesn't feel like city roads, and if Tysons wants to become more walkable, this will pose a major problem. The way that Tysons will try and form this street grid is kind of complicated, so try to hear me out. Many developers have planned what I'll call urban plots, which are a small area that will have some mixed-use skyscrapers, green spaces, and retail, all with a mini street grid. To see an example of this, simply look up Tysons on Google and click on images, and you will see multiple renderings of these urban plots that developers have proposed for Tysons. The plan is that as these urban plots are built, the street grids from each plot will slowly connect with the street grids from the other plots, which will slowly but surely form a street grid. Most of these are still in the planning stage, but one urban plot has recently completed in Tysons which will sort of give an idea as to how this will work. The plot that I'm referring to is called the Borough, and as you can see, it's a perfect example of what I just described. It's got some office and residential skyscrapers, retail, a movie theater, and some green spaces, and it has a small street grid that is similar to what you would see in a normal city. As you can see when looking at the streets, this looks a lot more like a traditional area in a city, but as you leave the area, you can see how it turns back into the traditional suburban Tysons, with bigger roads and everything is a lot more spread out. But as I'm sure you can imagine, as more urban plots like the borough pop up in Tysons and connect to each other, it will definitely have more of an urban feel. Perhaps one of the coolest planned urban plots in Tysons is The View, which would include the tallest building in the Washington, D.C. metro area at 600 feet, and will also include some pretty cool green spaces. Now all of this might sound simple and easy, and that Tysons should easily look like a city in no time, but not so fast. As you can see, when you look at most of the area, it still has a ton of big roads with higher speed limits that you'd find in suburban areas, and everything is a lot more spread out, with massive parking lots to things like car dealers, strip malls, and gas stations. Much of this will all have to be demolished and repurposed for these urban plots to take their place, which of course will cost a lot of money, and developers would have to obtain the proper rights and clearance to do so. Combine that with the now ongoing pandemic, and this is going to cost a lot of money that the developers will need to make sure if it's worth it. Another factor to consider is that the area has gotten pretty expensive, with an average rent costing well over $2,000 to $3,000 for a small apartment, and a median home value of around $600,000 to $700,000. Overall, these plans are definitely really cool, and I would love to see them happen and reach their goal by 2050, but the plans are extremely ambitious, and there's a lot more that goes into this than just what meets the eye. In conclusion, Tysons is one of the fastest growing areas in the country. Its proximity to the government in DC and the Dulles International Airport have made it an ideal place for job opportunities. The plan to transform the area into a city with 100,000 people and 200,000 jobs by 2050 is extremely ambitious, but given the already rapid growth of Tysons and what has happened to the area within the past few years, it certainly is possible for the place to become a lot more urban. Be sure to let me know what you think of Tysons and its ambitious plans down in the comments below. Do you think Tysons will become a true city by 2050? Be sure to let me know down in the comments below. Thanks a lot for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.